we want to talk about, things that apply to the work at this time of year. You know, you might be getting new equipment out. They may have been stored for a long time. Now that it's becoming springtime and warmer weather, you might be starting to get new things out. And we want to talk about different hazards, some of the general hazards of this type of equipment and things that you might find, some best practices and things to keep yourself safe and avoid injury from using this type of equipment. So that's the overview, and really just want to raise awareness to that about the different things you might use in the workplace or even at home with working around these types of equipment. There's lots of different types, and you can see here there's mowers, trimmers, tillers, hedge trimmers, things like that. There's lots of different types, and this presentation won't cover all the different types of equipment, but it will give just a little bit of an overview of these types of things and what you might want to watch for as we go through that. So just think about the types of equipment that you use. What do you use at home? What do you use in the workplace? You know, how do you protect yourself with these different types of equipment? That's what we're going to go over here today. The first thing that you want to do is know your equipment. With all of the different types of equipment out there, different features, different controls, and different purposes, and you just want to become familiar with each one that you can know how to protect yourself and use these things safely. Part of that is having the manuals. Go to the manual, read the operating instructions, and see what it says. There will be a lot of good warnings in there that tell you about how to use things, proper way to store things. We'll tell you about the different controls and the features of the equipment. And some of them are really specific and different than others. Those of you that have used different lawnmowers know that there's a little bit of a difference between them. So get familiar with those, know your equipment, and make sure that you do follow those different warnings and things on there, as that can really protect you on those things. When it comes to training, make sure that you get the right kind of training that you need. You should be trained on all equipment before you use it. And that could be going to the instructor's manual and reading it yourself, or it could be asking somebody else to give you the training for that. But just make sure that you have it. You don't want to find out the hard way and run into an issue because you didn't know how to use the equipment, or you didn't know how to get the settings or controls right on them. Don't hesitate to go and get that right equipment and protect yourself from injury there. This time of year, like I say, you might be starting to get things out of the shops and the sheds and getting new equipment out that's been sitting a long time, maybe even over the winter. And so before you put that into the workplace, you want to think about maintenance. Has all the maintenance been completed on it? Are all the fluids full? Are all the adjustments made that are necessary? Are guards put back on? Maybe there were things taken off and stored for the winter, or maybe there were repairs that were needed to be done that got put off until later and they just put it in the shed or storage for now. But you want to do that before you take it out and work. Make a good check on it and make sure that it's all in place. Check the safety features. You just want to make sure everything is ready to use and safe to use for the season. One recommendation we have is always inspect your equipment before you use it. It could be a daily inspection before you start that up, before you go and use it. Just look around, see if there's anything missing, make sure everything's in place, that everything's in good working order before you turn that equipment on and go using it. And you might even have a little checklist. You might put a little checklist together for each type of equipment of basic things that you want to check and make sure they're ready to go before you use that each day. That can really help to remind you and get information on there to know what to look for when you do those inspections. Are there any guards missing? This is one of the things you'll want to watch for. Here you have a lawnmower. Somebody might have been doing a repair or something on it and the guard got taken off. Well, make sure those things are put back on. Those guards and covers, those are there to protect you and keep you out of harm's way with moving parts and sharp things that can cut you. So make sure that the guards are all there. That's one of the key things you'll want to check for on all of your equipment. With outdoor power equipment, there's several hazards, and these are just some of the main things that you might find. Sharp blades is one. Things are moving around. There's moving parts and pieces, and you want to make sure that everything is sharp and working properly. Flying debris. There could be particles flying around. Things kicking up, rocks, branches, limbs, leaves, all kinds of things that can kick up. Those are things to watch for and protect yourself on. Burns. You might come in contact with a hot engine. You don't want to come in contact with that after it's been running for a while and get a burn from that. Even exhaust. If you were to work on these things and run equipment inside of a shop or a shed or somewhere inside for a little while, exhaust can build up and that can be hazardous for you as well. So knowing your locations and being aware of that can help you from those hazards. And also rotating parts. As things cut, they move around, and those things are things that you don't want to get in contact with. So those are just some of the main hazards, but each type of equipment could be different. You might have different hazards with say a chainsaw versus a mower. There could be some different things going on there that you want to be aware of. The thing that you want to look for is you want to inspect all of your work area. Do this before you go and mow in parks or open areas. Just take a look around and see what obstructions might be there, what objects are in there, what might be in the way that could be a hazard. Having a little bit of awareness about that can really help. So it could be the public at a park, it could be kids running around playing, it could be people standing off to the side that could be hit by flying objects. Take a good look at those things. There could even be toys or golf balls or other things left out in the parks and grass areas that if you mow over, it could really kick up and fly and cause some damage or injury. So make sure you watch for those, pick those things up, the rocks, the debris. Make sure things are clear before you go doing your job and mowing and cutting. Be aware of what's out there. Mowers are another thing to watch for. Make sure that you have your awareness up. Watch where you're mowing, the direction that you're heading. Sometimes there's slopes and hills that you might have to go up and down. And even with riding lawnmowers, there's been cases of being people rolling those over and having some serious injuries from that. We had a guy in the last few years that was going up a hill and had to roll over on the mowing equipment and ended up breaking bones, pinned him underneath the equipment and caused a real injury. So those are things that you want to watch for. If you're going up and down a hill, make sure that you go straight up and down the hill instead of sideways. Sometimes going sideways can cause that machine to tip over. So watch for those things. Watch for sprinkler heads sticking up or irrigation boxes. Sometimes we'll see holes in top of the green irrigation boxes where the mowers have gone over the top and cut them up. That can become a hazard as well. So be aware of what's around you, what you're cutting around, and what you might encounter. That can really help you avoid injury there. Another thing on mowers that you want to watch for is make sure your hands and feet are kept out of the way of moving parts. This last week, we had another issue where somebody lost a couple of fingers because they were working on equipment that was still running and got in the way of the blade, and a really bad situation there. Make sure that you're never working on equipment while it is running. De-energize that, turn it off, and then make the adjustments and repairs and things that you need. But you don't want to leave equipment unattended. You don't want to step out of it and keep it running and have somebody come along and get into a hazard. The other thing you don't want to do on mowers is disable the kill switches and the seat switches that turn off the equipment when you're not in it. Sometimes people bypass those, and that can be a real problem for a hazard there. So make sure you're not modifying things. Make sure that you de-energize and keep your hands and feet out of the way of the mowing equipment. One thing with outdoor power equipment is fueling. You want to make sure you handle gasoline properly and carefully, that you're not creating more hazards with that or causing fires or issues with the fuel. It's a good idea to fill up the equipment before you start using it that day. That way you have a good, cool engine. You're not filling it up while it's hot. Make sure your storage is good, that you have good ventilated areas and cool places. Store it in approved containers, which would be a metal gas can with a self-closing lid. You want to make sure you have those in place. Do it on level and flat surfaces and in places where there's not going to be other hazards with the fuels there. So those are things to think about. Getting into line trimmers. A lot of you probably use these at home, just trimming the edges of your lawn in the yard. And those of you that have done that know that there's a lot of flying particles that come up with that. Sometimes I'll be mowing my grass and I'll be going along just fine, and all of a sudden you get something that kicks up and hits you in the face. There's been many times when I was glad that I had my safety glasses on, because it's not worth losing an eye like that. So make sure you are wearing the correct protective equipment. At a minimum, you would want safety glasses, but you might even want a face shield, with something like that if you're seeing a lot of debris kicking up. Gloves would be good to have. Make sure that you've got good support. You want to make sure you have two hands on the trimmer, that you've got good footing, that you're not tripping over things and watching where you're going, that as you're moving and walking, you're not going to fall and come in contact with that line trimmer that's spinning around. Always cut away from yourself. You don't want to have that too close to your feet. You know, keep it at a good distance, be aware, and cut the right direction to avoid that, coming in contact with that. Make sure shields and guards are on there, and you want to make sure that you have the correct trimmer line. If you get the wrong kind, the wrong size, the wrong type of manufacturer, then things may, and it may become more of a hazard for you as well. So maintaining your equipment and having the right types of you know, trimmer line and other materials is a big thing too. But here's what happens. This is what happens when you come in contact with a weed whacker and you're not paying attention. Maybe you trip, and it's still moving and running as you fall onto. You can see what can happen there. It makes for a really bad day. So situational awareness. Be aware. Hang on tight. Have good support of the equipment. You might avoid accident and injury with those recommendations there. Hedge trimmers. Another thing you want to watch for. These are similar to line trimmers. You know, in different ways. They move. They cut things. But a little bit different because you're a little more raised up, working on the height of the bush there. So have a good solid base, have good footing just like the others, and keep yourself away from moving parts with the hedge trimmers. Let's look at wood chippers. Here's another hazard. Obviously, if you were to have this running and accidentally get, it could be a huge hazard for you. You want to keep out of those areas and make sure that you're holding things the right way, that you have good footing, and that you let the equipment do the job instead of, you know, forcing or pushing too hard and ending up falling inside of there. So make sure you have good eye and face protection on this, because there can be some real flying parts there. You don't want to have any loose fitting clothing, you know, where you could get tangled on the tree limbs or things that you're pushing in or other things like that. Also, these machines are really loud, so you're going to want some hearing protection with that as well. And one key to this is make sure that you turn off the equipment. If you're not using it at the moment, and you're going to pick up other tree branches or things like that, turn it off. There's no reason to keep things running and have a problem if you don't need it to be running at the time. So you can eliminate the hazard just by turning it off until you need to run that machine there. Chainsaws, another hazard as well. You can see, obviously, do some real cutting and things like that. But you want to make sure you understand the controls, know how the chain brake works, know the different controls and settings on it. Give that a good inspection and check it out before you use it. Chain tension is one of the things that you want to check. Make sure that's properly set. Also, lubrication. Make sure you have enough oil in there that it can move freely. And keep in mind that a sharp chain is a lot safer to use rather than a dull chain. The sharp chain is going to cut a lot more smoother through the tree branches, and it won't get hung up and kick back or pull in if it was dull. So you want to keep that well maintained on that chain, and consider sharpening or replacing the chain if needed to keep it sharp. So make sure you manage that and watch for those different hazards. You don't want to ever run your chainsaw in the dirt. That can really dull it really fast. So you want to keep it clean. You know, watch for cutting small limbs, things that can kick back or fly back on you. Make sure you have good handles on the equipment and good footing to manage that. So some special protective equipment you might want with a chainsaw is a face shield. So in addition to your safety glasses, you should have a face shield as well that keeps those particles from coming back and hitting you in the face. Also, we've had questions about, well, can I wear shorts when I'm running a chainsaw? And the answer is no, you shouldn't have shorts. You should have some pants, long pants, and chaps that prevent your legs from getting cut as well. So some real specifics for chainsaw protective equipment there. So make sure if you're not using the chainsaw at the time, turn it off. Shut off the engine. Don't leave it running if you don't have to. And always engage that chain brake if you're not using it at the moment. Those are things that might protect you from having an accident with a chainsaw. Pole saws, very similar to a chainsaw. They work in similar ways. But the difference between a pole saw is it's on a pole and it's a little farther extended out. And so usually used for cutting things overhead. So one thing you want to look for with a pole saw is don't stand directly underneath the area where things could fall on you or hit you. There's been times where the person operating the pole saw isn't aware that other people are coming around, or even the bystanders don't realize that somebody's cutting there, and they come on walking in and fall, and you know, tree limbs can fall and hit people. So you want to make sure that before you go using a pole saw and working overhead, that you have that area very well cleared out. You could even barricade the area or have somebody watching to keep people out of the way. But you want to make sure that nobody's standing underneath those branches and things that can come down. So watch your cutting overhead. You're going to want some head protection on this as well. Obviously, falling tree branches can cause accidents. We've seen claims on that as well, where people get hit in the head by falling branches. So those are things to learn from. Good footing, good handles as well, and good personal protective equipment on those. This is one of the outdoor power equipment that does not cut things, but it can be a hazard as well. There's been times people have come in contact with a pressure washer, with the, being at the front of the nozzle there. And so you want to stay clear of that. You don't want to have any direct contact with that high pressure, because it really can cause a serious injury. It can cut through skin and cause some real damage to your body. So stay clear of the nozzle. Keep people out of the way as well. And again, situational awareness, being aware of what you are spraying off the surface, the different types of debris and things that might kick up and blow around. Being aware of that is something you want to watch for. There's even times with a pressure washer that you'll go and spray off the surface and things will kick back directly back up into your face. So you probably want a face shield, for something like that, where you've got protection from those flying particles. Watch for your hoses as you're moving around. Those are things that you might accidentally trip on. Keep the area clear and be aware of where that hose is. Watch for the debris and things that kick up. Watch for even electrical hazards. You might have extension cords out there, outlets, things that you don't want to spray. And as you know, water and electrical doesn't mix too well together. So be aware of those different hazards with a pressure washer. And follow the guidelines, follow the manufacturer's recommendations on all these types of equipment, because they're going to have special warnings, special things you need to check for, special settings or controls. You just want to become familiar with all that before you use it. So a question for you: are you in the practice of wearing your personal protective equipment when you're working on the job site, or if you're working at home? Do you wear your safety glasses when you're supposed to? Do you have gloves? Is everything available that you need? Face shields? We need to get into the practice of that. There's been times when I'm working and doing things, and sometimes I think, man, I really need to make sure I'm wearing this because I don't want to lose an eye. I don't want to have an injury, I don't want to lose a finger. It's worth getting injured and having those problems. So make sure that you do protect yourself and wear the right protective equipment. And here's some of the basics for outdoor power equipment work. These are some of the basic things you want to have. Like I say, there's other specifics you might want to have, but gloves are going to be one of the minimum things you should have available. Safety glasses, probably for all types of outdoor work, you're going to need safety glasses on. Hearing protection for the loud equipment, face shield possibly with all the flying particles and things that can come up. And when it comes to clothing, make sure that you're dressing the part. You don't want loose fitting clothing, things that's going to snag or get caught into the equipment that you're running as things are moving around. You don't want to get caught up in that. But long sleeves, long pants, those are things you might consider and really need for some of that type of work outdoors. The key is protect yourself. You don't want to take those chances. So to summarize, there's lots of different types of equipment out there. They have different features and controls, but you have to know your equipment, know what you're working with, get the training that you need, follow the manual instructions, and do what you need to protect yourself. Always inspect before use. You don't want to get caught off guard and find something missing as you're using that equipment. So always check it out, make sure it's in good condition and maintained well. Eliminate the hazards if you can. It's a lot easier to keep yourself safe if you can just eliminate the hazard completely. But always protect yourself. Safety really is the priority, whether it's at home or work or wherever it may be. Definitely have to keep ourselves safe and be aware of those things as we work around them. So that's this training there. Any questions that you're seeing out there, Jason?
I haven't got any questions in yet, folks. Please go ahead and type those into the Q&A box or the chat box, and we will answer those questions right now. Good job, Brent. This is such an important subject because it really transpires work, because we all use this equipment at home as well, and it's really easy to get home. Hey, I'm relaxed. I put on my shorts and my sandals, and well, maybe I'll mow the lawn. And it's really easy to kind of take yourself out of that safety mode if you're not paying attention to it. So great message there. Looking for questions there. Seeing questions. We don't have to worry about getting Zoom bombed, right? Because we can't even get questions out of some of the folks on here. So I think we're doing pretty good. Doug, you got anything to add?
Nope, that was all great. Thanks, Brent. Good job.
Thank you.
Hey, Brent, final word.
Everybody be safe out there for this time of year with all the equipment. It's not worth getting injured. So be smart, be safe. Everybody have a great day.